All right, there it is. Welcome in to our first show of 2021 here on Hooray for Hollywood on the Curated Media channel. We have a great show for you today, and we are going to be discussing the top 25 actors of the 21st century, or our list for the top 25 actors of the 21st century with a couple modifications. I'm joined as always by my two dynamic co-hosts, Pat and JB, and we are excited to join into the discussion. How are you guys doing?
Great. Glad to kiss 2020 behind.
That's right. Full disclosure, JB's celebrating because we're recording on the last days of 2020, but by the time you guys see this, it will be very mercifully 2021. Right, JB?
Ask not what you can do for Hooray for Hollywood, but what we can do for you. Something like that, I think. That's going to be my theme song for 2021.
I like that. I think this show will evolve, but last time we did some just general entertainment stories that were more catered towards production. But we saw that I think it was early December that the New York Times critics released a list, and it was a feature. It was a built-out listicle kind of thing called 25 Greatest Actors of the 21st Century so far, as JB loves to say. And there were some real interesting picks on that. So, this show is going to sort of be set up around that. But before we dive into the details of the list, because we'll be reviewing all of it, JB, what was your initial reaction to the list? What did you think of it?
Well, at first I thought, was this a joke? To be honest with you, because there were so many names on there of actors who either have been one-hit wonders, never heard ofs, or barely acting at all, and they're on the top 25 for the first 20 years of this century, which I've been fortunate to be alive and sort of be up taking nourishment and actually being able to take in news and entertainment. So I thought, maybe this was deliberately done by a bunch of young people just trying to be provocative and get some attention to this list. And I realized, no, it's New York Times, and it wasn't just New York Times picking up somebody else's work. This is A.O. Scott and the gang there, and these aren't people to be trifled with. But by the same token, there's some very interesting choices. So I went from being sort of totally dismissive to being, what are they seeing here with some of these picks that I don't see? So it was worth going through, and I ended up taking it more seriously than I originally thought I was going to because of the nature of what I saw when I did a quick once over. But after I looked at it, I'm like, all right, there's some merit to some of these things. So I'm going to be a little open-minded, but I got my definite opinions, no doubt.
Yeah. Pat, you?
Yeah. I think I was struck too. There are definitely some actors and actresses that you'd expect that were to be on this list that may be reflected in our picks later on in the show, but that were not. But then I think these are also critics. We have a pretty global mindset on this. We watch a lot of television and movies from other parts of the world, from Asia and Europe and beyond that even. And I think that these critics are even more globally minded, and they are seeing consistently more. So they're seeing, someone that didn't come up for our discussion, like Catherine Deneuve, who certainly I love Catherine Deneuve. Loved her in the 60s and from that point forward. Do I watch a lot of the films that she's in today? No, but I'm sure that French people are, and these critics are, and so maybe they're just exposed to a different array of films than we are, and it seems like it informs this list in some surprising ways, and then some not surprising ways.
Yeah. It was very interesting. So the way that we had the show set up, and agree with Pat totally and JB on their sort of idea behind the list and some of the shocks and some of the interesting things that are going on. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the list from 25 to 1. We have a couple people. Each one of us chose two people from the list that we would like to highlight that we thought were good selections or deserve to be on the list, whether it be in the position that they are or just generally for inclusion or thought it was good. So we'll go through those. And then, as Pat alluded to, we're going to right some wrongs, in our opinion, by adding a couple people that we thought were notable omissions, even though I think we wish we could have had a couple more slots even to add some actors additionally to this list.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we begin, the article does sort of finish off with a quote that says, "We are entering a golden age of acting. In fact, maybe a platinum age." And I'm thinking, gee, has anybody seen the 40s or the 50s?
Yeah.
What about the late 60s and early 70s cinema? Anybody see what happened there? Anybody catch that by any chance? I mean, so let's not get crazy here, okay? I mean, when we're sitting here 25 years in and all of a sudden we're sitting there saying got more talent than other eras. I mean, it's like the Hall of Fame voting, right? You got to, I guess it's era to era, but I'm not saying we don't have talented people here, but to say it's above and beyond everybody else, I think that's a larger debate. But anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll kick it off. We got numbers 25 through 11 here on this graphic right here. I just before we go into spotlighting people, I think each one of us maybe give a shout out to maybe one other pick that we liked on this list. For me, I thought Joaquin Phoenix, I think, definitely belongs on any list of top actors for this sort of generation or for this century. Just consistently been doing good work, whether it be with Paul Thomas Anderson or James Gray, or even as wacky as he was something else in The Joker. Certainly gives a unique performance every time out. JB, did you have sort of a runner-up from this list of actors that you'd like to give a shout out to?
That were good?
Yeah, that you enjoyed.
Well, I have to say, I mean, in his own way, Wes Studi has been around a long time and played various different, very often, obviously, indigenous American acting roles, and he's always pretty good. So I'm surprised he was in his top 25, but then again, I think he deserves credit because the guy's been around a long time. He's always delivers a good performance when he's out there. So I think that's kind of a nice tip of the cap to him.
All right, and Pat?
Yeah, I love that Tilda Swinton was on here. At first, I missed her the first time through, and I was like, how's Tilda Swinton? I mean, she's always doing something interesting. She is a very unique person. I don't think there's anyone else quite like her, even when she was married to David Byrne. I think those are two very unique people. And so I'm always engaged by her work, and I was excited to see that the critics... prestigious critics are as well.
Yeah, true chameleon. But Pat, actually, your first pick, you went a little bit a different direction. You ended up picking the number 18 actor, Willem Dafoe. So tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, so from the article, Julian Schnabel writes, one thing that's super important is that he's a very generous actor. He cares about other people's performances and about helping them by being available in whatever he's doing. He's very, very loyal and very, very smart. If you've got somebody who's smart, they can make it better. And I love Willem Dafoe, a consistent from, you look at his credits from 2000 to today, and he's working super consistently because he's both a great character actor, he plays a great villain, and then he can really turn on a dime and play really understated roles. And I thought that quote was interesting because I remember when they were doing press for The Lighthouse that came out last year, and Robert Eggers, the director, talked a lot about how Robert Pattinson, who's another actor I like, his process is very different from Willem Dafoe's, which was basically exactly that quote where, Willem wanted to work the scenes, wanted to work different things. So it's always nice when somebody that you admire seems to be like both invested in their craft and invested in making other people better. But, he's a... no matter what he's doing, I think he's he's got one of the faces that's interesting to look at. And he knows how to use it. He knows how to leverage it in different ways. And in both a, sort of classical studio, actorly kind of star kind of way. And in a, method, like if you look at Florida Project, that's a very understated but effective role from Dafoe. That's a little bit more method. So big fan and glad he was on the list.
JB, I know you're pretty fond of him too, right?
Yeah, I like Willem Dafoe. He's, he can play the Green Goblin, and he can be in a movie called Hunter, which not a lot of people saw, which is a very inward-looking piece about him tracking down a Tasmanian tiger to try to get a serum out of him, and this conflict that he had within himself about whether that was the really right thing to do. And then he, of course, was in the first John Wick series. Played a terrific role, understated. So, here's a guy that doesn't quite have leading man looks, but has always been in great shape. He's been a big yogi for 40, 50 years. But he seems like he picks his parts, and it doesn't really, it's not about starring for him. It seems like he just wants to play something that he either can explore a part of himself that maybe he hasn't seen before, or he likes the script, or he likes the people around him. But he never a false note with this guy. You never go, oh, geez, he was off on that. You don't see that with him.
No, never.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what you guys said was great. I think, JB, to your point, the fact that he started off basically this century with the biggest movie ever, I mean, basically Spider-Man, and then has gone on to consistently decide to make independent fare, says a lot about what he's interested in. And yeah, I just have a note here that I said he's just a reliable actor with a very specific presence in every film. And he has an archetype almost that's, I feel like when I see him on screen, that I expect from him. However, to Pat's point, in something like the Florida Project, he kind of turns that on its head and shows you a side of him that you don't necessarily expect to see. And it's wonderful to be surprised like that with somebody's range. So actually, because we're going in order, our picks kind of bunched up around each other. And I'm just going to introduce my guy, who is a male. It's Michael B. Jordan, who comes in at number 15. And the reason why I decided to shine the spotlight on him, not that he needs it, because he's one of the biggest stars in the world, but I said I recently rewatched like the last two seasons of Friday Night Lights, and those two seasons really hinged, because they turned over the cast, really hinged pretty heavily on Michael B. Jordan sort of carrying the show. I mean, obviously Kyle Chandler's incredible, Connie Britton, but he does it in such a way that it's sort of like an expansion on the character Wallace he played on The Wire. He got to star in movies with Ryan Coogler, and Ryan Coogler is actually the person who they interviewed for this article. And I pulled his quote from the article. So Coogler says of Michael B. Jordan, "I saw this ability to make you empathize with him. Not all actors have this thing. When you immediately care about someone right offhand, and that triggers an empathetic reaction, he had that. He also had a very advanced toolkit as an actor." So I thought this was just a really interesting, because, the more I've been thinking about it, his physicality and charisma honestly remind me in a way of a young Tom Cruise. Like, he just has this like sort of star power confidence that it just kind of elevates some of the material. And he made it through a failed franchise, like basically spin-off with the Fantastic Four, and they still wanted him in another franchise because he's sort of got that much big energy, and ended up being the villain in one of the biggest box office films of all time. So I don't know. What do you guys think, Pat?
Yeah, I think of all the actors on this list, I wish that I could like pal around with Michael B. Jordan. Like, I feel like having a beer with Michael B. Jordan would be just...
He doesn't look like he drinks much beer, Pat. Sorry about that.
That's true. Or liquor, whatever his drink. I'm buying. If we're in this situation, I'm buying for Michael B. Jordan.
They might have a beer if you're buying.
But he's like, but he has that, like, you want to see, kind of like with Willem Dafoe, where he has a very interesting face. But like Michael B. Jordan, you want to like Michael B. Jordan, and you want to like connect with that character on screen or in real life. I think it is. It's a you can't quantify that. You're born with that kind of energy and charisma, and I think the choices that he's made in his career are also really interesting and encouraging. And I think I don't know if you guys saw this, but he's going to direct and star in Creed 3. So super excited to see what he does with the rest of this century.
Interesting.
Yeah, JB.
Well, he was good enough for Sly Stallone, so it's good enough for me. Of all the guys, when you think about it, all the African-American athletic actors and people that he could have picked to, play Apollo Creed's son, he picked Michael P. Jordan, and I don't think he certainly didn't disappoint. And the chemistry between those two guys was, I think, palpable not only on screen, but you got the sense that off screen, Jordan was absorbing everything that Stallone had to say, because, you can say a lot about Stallone, but the guy's a survivor, has been around a long time, and he's got two of the most successful franchises in movie history.
Right.
And without capes and without special effects. So when you look back on that, for all the people that want to maybe look down upon Stallone in his abilities, look what he did with basically his fists and basically his body, and created a huge franchise that we're still looking at today, looking at sequels upon sequels. So,
Yeah.
I think that says a lot about him that he chose Michael P. Jordan too for that role. So,
yeah, I think that is great. Now, JB, you chose a guy. I think he comes in at number 15 on the list. A guy that all three of us I know really enjoy, and that guy, of course, is Oscar Isaac. So, why choose him?
Well, I think he deserves to be on this list. No question about it. And got a quote up there, which.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
Okay. So on Oscar Isaac, film critic A.O. Scott writes, his characters aren't always as lucky or as sure of themselves, but the man himself operates with the precision of someone who is confident enough in his skills to push himself into risky new territory. The summer before Inside Llewyn Davis, 2013, was released, Joel and Ethan Coen told us that they had originally wanted to cast a well-known musician in the title role. Instead, they found Isaac, who told them, according to Joel, that most actors, if you ask them if they play guitar, they'll say they've played guitar for 20 years. But what they really mean is that they've owned a guitar for 20 years. Isaac could actually play. When I think about what makes him so credible as an actor, that is the first thing that comes to mind.
That says a lot right there. It's interesting, though, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of what actors get paid to do, right? They kind of get paid to pretend like they're other people, right?
Right.
So every time they step up to the plate, I'm supposed to believe that if they're playing baseball, a baseball player, that they can hit the ball out of the park. If they're playing a surgeon, that they're going to save the child, right? As I have a little quip here, I said, make me believe the make believe, right? That's what actors do. We're in a make believe environment, and they have to make me believe that they belong in that environment. And if they do that, that's acting.
Right.
And so when men and women are able to do that, it puts them in another category. Because in my opinion today, and notwithstanding the pronouncement at the beginning of this segment about that we're in a platinum age of acting, we're also in an age of celebrity and personalities sort of being believed as actors or actresses. And they're not. They're personalities and celebrities playing a part almost like with a wink to the audience. We know that's who we're looking at. And some of them get to the point where they're legendary. And when Jack Nicholson's on screen, I don't care who he's playing, and not to say that he can't play a great role. That's Jack Nicholson. Pacino's there, De Niro's there, and I love these guys. But I'm seeing them play this character, and I don't see the seamless transformation. Oscar Isaac is one of these guys that, I agree, the Most Violent Year, very underrated. I believed he was playing that part. I believed he knew about the oil business. I believe he had been through a lot of that stuff himself. And he has that combination of outward volatility and inward sort of seething, and also just sort of this constant battle between the good angels and bad angels. He's got that kind of, like he had in Ex Machina. We're pretty sure he's a menacing bad guy, but yet only little spurts of it were shown, certainly at the beginning. You're thinking, well, maybe, if we're out there in the woods all by ourselves and we're genius, maybe we'd have that kind of thing too. So I think this young man, well, I guess he's probably in his late 30s now or 40, but he's a very talented guy, and we're going to see, I hope to see a lot more of him in the future, because I think there's all sorts of parts he could play. Yeah.
Pat, you have anything to add?
No, love Oscar Isaacs. Excited for every role that he's in. I did see made the rounds on Twitter that he was in a Christian ska band in the 90s, and that's probably where he learned how to play the guitar. It's pretty wild, pretty enjoyable, made me like him more.
Yeah, I haven't not seen him give a sour note. There's other actors that I've thought the same thing of, and I won't mention any names, but they have disappointed lately in some of their role selection and just some of the performances they give. Seems like he wants to JB's point, make a authentic character out of every person that he brings to the screen. And I don't, for me, I think his performance as Llewyn Davis, I don't think there's another actor that could have given that particular performance. And it's just, he knocks it so far out of the park. It's incredible. All right. So that's our 25 through 11. So just before we go, we'll just throw back up 25 through 11, just so people can see. One other person that I didn't get to shout out that I think is somebody who probably will be making their way up the ranks. Mahershala Ali has had pretty awesome track record in terms of awards in the past several years. And I imagine he'll be getting more and more awards recognition as time goes on, because he just seems to be giving really, really good performances every time out. So that being said, let's turn the page. Next, we have numbers 10 through 8. All right, there you go, folks. So we got Saoirse Ronan, Viola Davis, Zhao Tao, Tony Servillo, Song Kang-ho, Nicole Kidman, Keanu Reeves, and of course the great Daniel Day-Lewis. So surprisingly, only one of us chose a person from this piece of the list. So it was actually Pat. So Pat, who'd you end up picking?
I could not pick her, but Saoirse Ronan, who clocks in at number 10 on the list here. As A.O. Scott writes, even when she's in becalmed period dramas or gentle comedies of domestic life, Ronan brings a quicksilver precision that is thrilling and a little unsettling to watch. This is because as much as she captures the emotional weather and specific body language of, say, a 16th century Scottish queen or a 21st century California teenager, what she conveys even more vividly is the way that these people think and the way that it feels to be inside their heads, which I think is a great summation of Saoirse Ronan, which I think, is pretty universally liked by the critical community and most other film goers. But you could say, well, she's awfully, young. She's, I believe, 24, 25 still. She's awfully young to be on this list. She's played a lot of these adolescent to young, adult woman roles and hasn't maybe had the opportunity to show the range outside of those roles as others have. But I disagree, because I think, as A.O. Scott points out, that she brings such a well-communicated inner life to each of these characters that is a little bit different, that shows you how they're different, that shows you what's going on with them. I really like her. I'm glad you picked a when you were putting this together, RC, that you picked a still from Brooklyn. That might be my favorite. That might be my favorite role of hers, and she's been in some great movies. I loved Little Women and her work with Wes Anderson. But she really sells she sells the immigrant experience, the experience of being an outsider and finding your way in the world for the first time and navigating. Just a wonderful performance, and she does it again and again. So
I would say just one other thing, and then I'll toss it to JB. But yeah, I don't think I've ever seen homesickness rendered in such painful light as when in Brooklyn, when she's over here and she's got basically no one. I just remember the ache in my heart through that whole movie, just with everything that she was going through. And you're right, it's internalized. And I think she first broke out. Atonement was, I think, her first major role. I think she got nominated for some awards for that. And she was just a young girl alongside Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, another two pretty good actors. And she kind of steals the show for the first half of that movie. So I would say Saoirse is great. JB, do you have anything else to add about Saoirse? I know you've become fond of her.
She's also an action hero. That's
right.
With Eric Bana, and oh, by the way, Kate Blanchett she goes up against.
That's right.
That's not exactly a chump change there in that movie. And she's just a kid, but she's and you know how I am when it comes to my action roles. Make me believe the make believe, and sometimes, unfortunately, male and female characters are put in positions where it's impossible to physically do what these people are doing, right? Even if they're well trained, because I always have this thing aren't the other guys well trained too? There's not more cops are fighting, right? But she is very believable in that movie, and she acts her emotions and this whole idea of her not knowing what her real life was like, backstory, and we're trying to find it out as she's finding out. Just terrific. She's just a terrific actress. And, you could see in Little Women, Meryl, I could see it anyway. Meryl Streep's looking at her doing some of these scenes, and I'm thinking, Meryl Streep's like, boy, I wish I had your future again, kid. I wish I was coming through again with your talent, because the world is going to be your oyster. And also, in terms of her age and maturity, I'm sorry, there's still something to be said for some of these people that they come from Ireland and Wales and England and other parts of the world where there's more expected of them as they're young people. In many ways, in terms of the maturity and the things that they're faced with. I think that sort of seasons them earlier. That's why I think a lot of these young English actors come out, because they're exposed to more greater works and they're doing things at a very early age. Just like we see in Formula One racing, where these kids out of Europe and they're kart racing when they're 13. Well, a lot of these kids are on stage doing stuff at a very early age. So not all of them get to be, what she's able to do, but no, she's very talented. She's going to be terrific.
Yeah, and Pat, just to wrap it up, I'll ask you. The one thing I jotted down here was, it seemed like the early part of the 2010s, Jennifer Lawrence was the queen bee, and then you sort of had the come up of Brie Larson won an Oscar, Emma Stone won an Oscar.
Yep.
When do you think? What do you think it was that has put Saoirse ahead, or what separates her from those sort of her other three peers that I think she's pretty closely compared to?
Yeah, I think she took on the mantle, after Lady Bird, which was universally beloved, and she's great in. But I really, I like all those other actresses, quite a bit, but not nearly as much as Saoirse. I just don't think. I don't think similar to what you were saying, JB, about Oscar Isaacs, I think that you see her melt into these roles and they're similar, but they're distinct because she's truly living that character's life. Whereas I don't think that you always see that. Like when I see Jennifer Lawrence or Emma Stone in particular, when I see them, or even Brie Larson, when I see them on screen, like they're doing great work. I don't dislike what I'm seeing, but I don't see them disappear the way that you do Saoirse. And I think that's the true distinction of a star versus a great actor.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's interesting. They're all very talented. I've noticed with Larson in particular, I really like her work when it's more serious, dramatic stuff. She doesn't do so well when the script is a little bit more broad. She doesn't seem to know. She can't fully render a character. Like I didn't find her Captain Marvel quite as, obviously there wasn't as much there as there was in something like Short Term. What was it? Short Term 10?
Short Term 12.
Short Term 12. Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously her personality kind of transcended her as she was coming up. And I think that might have hurt the reputation of some for acting a little bit. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
She's sort of taking a clean break here when she comes back, what sort of mode she's in. So that certainly should be fascinating. But before we move on, let's just open this up. Is there anybody else that we want to give a shout out to? JB, do you have anybody else?
Well, obviously, the great Daniel Day-Lewis. It goes without saying that he belongs on any list of great actors, anytime, any place. But it's as much as I like Keanu, I'm not sure how you place him. He's, I guess, more in the role of celebrity personality, but yet you enjoy what he's doing because he's doing what he's doing, and it's sort of a variation of him. And Gung Fu has become a thing because of him. But Viola Davis, she's done a pretty good role. When you look at her career in the last 15 years, kind of parts that she's played, kind of accolades that she gets, and it seems like time in and time out, she's right there. Not playing the same part, but where she's coming from. She's sort of got that thing inside of her that, when she needs to pull it out, it's there. But when it's not needed, she can pull it back. So, and Nicole Kidman seems to be on HBO every other week. So
she's everywhere.
Doing great work. And she's somebody she's a chameleon boy. She can play different characters, even though she looks pretty much the same, but something about her ability with her eyes and her brain to sort of flip into a different mode. And you look at her and go, wow, she's in a different place than I saw last week, type of thing.
This guy, Tony Servillo, I've only seen him in 2 or 3 movies, The Great Beauty being the most notable, but he's just got this sort of quintessential cool guy Italianness that they sort of retrofit and sort of build characters around.
Yeah, the only other, I think, notable call out here that we haven't touched on is Song Kang-ho, who's enjoyed a very, very fruitful partnership with Bong Joon-ho. And came to, if you are already aware of both those, artists, then you certainly were after Parasite last year. But the two of them have been making movies together, and Song Kang-ho's been in a number of other major Korean films. So I think that's where you see the international lens, especially, is that, Song Kang-ho, somebody that we're aware of. I don't know, maybe not all of our viewers have been exposed to his work, but then if you went to any part of Asia Pacific part of the world, they would know who he is, and so I think that's well deserving. He's certainly well deserving to be on the list, and somebody I wish that I got to seek out more of his films.
Agreed. So that means that we actually pretty efficiently, minute per minute, made it through the 23 of the 25 selections on this list. So if you're watching at home, take a moment to pause to make your guesses on who the top two are. I think you might be able to get one. I big kudos to you if you can guess both of them. So drum roll, please. So top two are Isabelle Huppert and Denzel Washington, which JB and I happened to each pick one of the two. So first, I actually decided to choose Isabelle Huppert. And just full disclosure, I've only seen like a handful of her work, especially work from this century. She's been working in France. I mean, she's probably beyond the Meryl Streep of French film. Probably her and Juliette Binoche are probably the two most, mainstream, recognizable to American audiences. But she's done some incredible work, most notably The Piano Teacher, and more recently, Paul Verhoeven's Elle, which was twisted in so many ways. And she just, I think American audiences know her because she seems to pop up in like intelligent parts and small parts in American films. I think Steven Soderbergh's had her in some movies. David O. Russell had her in I Heart Huckabees. But to me, she's like the embodiment of that archetype of the French woman. And, it's not right totally generalized, but she's just sort of strong. She's enigmatic, and she's just unafraid to just totally mow you over. So on Isabelle Huppert, comes in at number 2, Manohla Dargis had the following to say: fearless and mesmerizing, sometimes scary, sometimes freakish, Isabelle Huppert has taken on astonishment of roles over her career, moving effortlessly from tears to shrieks, from the straightest stories to the most glorious unhinged. She's acted in more than 50 movies this century alone, an industriousness that speaks to her ambition and popularity, but also suggests a ravenous hunger that you can see in her acting. I love many of her performances, but I am especially captivated by her monsters, by her horrifying, unspeakable women. Pretty electric when you see her on screen. She is not afraid to go for it. I'll tell you, she's not afraid to not be likable. Have you guys had any exposure to any of her films or any of her performances? I'm just curious.
No, I really haven't. I know she was in Michael Haneke's, one of his recent
Amore. She was in Amore, I believe, as the daughter.
Yeah. So I remember seeing all the advertisements for that. I never saw the movie. So no, I haven't. No, she's highly regarded, but we'll leave the commentary to you.
Well, I'm going to throw something at you, RC, that you may not be aware of. She's also got a comedic side. She has a recurring role in the French series that's on Netflix called My Agent.
Oh.
And every French star that you can think of, it's sort of like an entourage over there. All have recurring arcs. And she has a really funny self-parody type thing that she plays with here. And it's really, really good. So
that being said, the top dog was Denzel. And I'll let JB give us why he decided to shine his spotlight in that direction.
Well, I mean, what can you say about this guy? I mean, he's probably one of the strongest presence on screen in the last 30 years, since he popped on the screen in such a glorious way in Glory, all the way through Training Day. Tom Hanks in the Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, right? That was the name.
Yes, Philadelphia. Yep. Absolutely.
Played a lawyer, obviously struggling with his feelings about homosexuality and AIDS and everything. And you could see him, same token, trying to get the situation. And then there's several movies, action films he's been in, that Man on Fire, American Gangster is one of my particular favorites.
Right.
He's remarkable. And Fences, of course, more recently. And I'm not ashamed to say I love him in Equalizers.
Yep.
I think both of them are really good movies, not coincidentally with Tony Scott and Ridley Scott there. So
Denzel Washington is beyond category, a screen titan who's also a subtle and sensitive craftsman with a serious old school stage training and a blazing movie star presence. He can do Shakespeare and August Wilson, villainy, or action heroism. He is also one of the supreme regular guy actors who can forget his embattled working stiffs on Unstoppable, 2010, and The Taking of Pelham 123, 2009, a pair of big, noisy, train-themed movies directed by Tony Scott. Neither one is a masterpiece, but I never get tired of watching Washington on the job.
Yeah, the rewatchability of his movies is huge. I mean, Man on Fire, I could watch over and over again. American Gangster, the Equalizer films, I'm right there. Training Day is another one's pretty intense, but when it comes on, it's hard to turn off. I mean, it's just to go Unstoppable with Chris Pine. It's a crappy movie in many ways, but Denzel, without him, it's like it would be a terrible movie. With him, it's not a bad movie. At the end of it, you go, that wasn't too bad, actually. He seems to be one of these actors that can take direction and give direction. He seems to be one of these people that he'll pat you on the back when you need it and he'll kick you in your ass when you need it too. I mean, he seems to have that reputation. He doesn't suffer fools. He's there to do his work. I think it's because he's got an athletic background and, you know, he came up the hard way, grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, I believe, and got lucky to get trained and has never, I think, taken any of it for granted, which I think somebody as big as him and could star in anything, I think that says a lot about him and his willingness to go back into community theater and help younger actors and people. And he had a relationship with Chadwick Boseman. He was a sponsor of his and paid for his, I think, his performance arts school or something, I believe. Denzel did anonymously. It didn't come out until after, tragically, Chadwick passed away. And then somebody, I don't even think it came out of Denzel's camp. I think somebody else talked about it. So he's a remarkable guy. If you ever heard him, he's also a terrific speaker, motivational speaker. He's just an all-around terrific person and a great actor. And I think we've been lucky to watch him over the last 30, 40 years, really.
Pat?
Yeah, I mean, his star presence is undeniable. And I guess there are a lot of aspects. It's funny because, you know, in the first half of this decade, you know, through 2010 or so, he was still starring in these super high profile, high concept vehicles, you know, the American Gangster, the Manchurian Candidate, the remake was something like 2000. And then in the 2010s, I guess I mostly think of him as, you know, on Taking a Pelham of 123, the Equalizer films. And I, you know, in my head, I see him on a trajectory kind of similar to
Liam Neeson.
Yeah, like a Liam Neeson, who again, love Liam Neeson, but like, is he an all-time great act? You know, is the work that he's done in these past 20 years as great as his early work in the 90s? I don't know. But it's interesting hearing you talk about that, JB, to hear about, you know, certainly he's done Fences and he was involved, I believe he was involved in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, right?
Yeah, so just a note on that. My one point was going to be the fact that basically what he's done is he's sort of leveraged his influence, and now he's going to produce all of August Wilson's plays as films in the next however many years it takes him to basically get them up and running. Obviously, Netflix was the home for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but yeah, he's very enthused and now is working as a producer. But yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, so I think that I think like his mainstream, you know, quote unquote mainstream, higher profile projects aren't necessarily these showy actor pieces anymore. But that he's still, you know, that he's working on the August Wilson stuff, and then he's going back and doing plays and really paying it forward is incredibly, you know, admirable, and a testament to, you know, both his talent and his desire to pass that on.
Yeah, he's. I have nothing else to add. I think he's certainly a worthy pick for number one. And when, you know, scrolling through, I think my reaction was similar to both of yours. You know, maybe head scratch at a couple, maybe the order of some things and a couple of picks, but then you get to the top, and then I was like, all right, well, I can defend both of these. Seem pretty justified with the number of credits and just the quality of work over the time period. However, as we said, we're not totally satisfied with this list. So we kind of set rules for ourselves. I wish we had a couple more slots, but we wanted to basically name two what we thought were notable omissions from the list, people that have done great work in the past 20 years that did not get recognized that we thought should have. So, you know what? We're going to kick it off with JB's first pick. And his first pick was... drum roll, please. Christian Bale.
A guy named Christian Bale. Maybe you've heard of him. All he's been doing is doing great roles and picking up Oscar nominations and a couple wins. over the last 20 years. And you can see some of the notable credits there. He's a maniac in a lot of ways. He's method to the degree that sometimes would be, has been a distraction for him and gotten him to some issues. On the other side of it, he and Christopher Nolan have paired to make probably the greatest dark comic trilogy in the history of mankind. He's just a tremendous actor. We talk about, here's an example of, in my view, a guy who is, we know who he is, we know his personality, sort of, and he disappears into his characters. Dick Cheney, he became Dick Cheney. The fighter, he was Dickie Eklund. He disappears into these characters. The machinist, he literally almost physically disappeared because he lost so much weight. But then for Batman Begins, he puts on 50 pounds of muscle and he gets nominated. He wins and it just keeps going. Ford versus Ferrari, another example of him diving into the subject matter to the point where I'm told he was almost good enough for some of the guys who were, racing technicians said, if he really wanted to race sports cars, he would actually be pretty damn good. So you just, I don't see how you can, when you look at it, this century alone, how you cannot have Christian Bale on the list is beyond me.
Yeah. Pat, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think Christian Bale's great. I think the only reason I was just trying to think of why, as you were going through that, JV, like why would you exclude Christian Bale from this list? And the only thing I can think of is, external factors. Do you think that his infamous set outburst, does that count against? I feel like that's colored a lot of the coverage of Christian Bale's career after that point. That he, has a reputation as being angry and difficult. Even though I don't, given how steadily he works and the variety of people that he works with, I don't know that that's true. But I wonder if that's a factor.
You look at him disappearing into the characters like in American Hustle.
Yeah.
And Michael Burry in Big Short. He has a wide range too. He's not just Mr. Dark and pensive. He can play. I'd love to see him getting a real broad comedy. I'd love to see him do like a buddy comedy type thing. But I think
it seems like he could do a Monty Python kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he could pull that off. That's the only thing other than musical.
Yeah. I was just wondering, to your point about the physical transformation. I do think that some critics think of that as, almost, I know it's essential to these roles, but I don't think it's sort of at this sort of, not call them, they're kind of highfalutin critics. I don't know if they necessarily are as enamored with it as I think the common audience that builds this mythos of these actors who transform their bodies constantly. We all know how hard it is, but I think there's a disconnect there. And I think that might be the reason that he was not included. Part of the reason that maybe he was not included on the list. Because otherwise, I think his Dick Eklund in The Fighter, to me, is such a unbelievable
when you see him side by side, it's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Dick Cheney, forget about it.
Yeah, Dick Cheney was pretty good too. It was really compelling stuff. Pat, your first notable omission was
Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a huge star, obviously, but I think also a tremendously talented actor. And I think if you look at the credits here that we have up on screen, that you could just pick his work. You could pick with his work just with Martin Scorsese since the year 2000, or even just Quentin Tarantino since the year 2000. And I think that work, qualifies him for this list. He's obviously won an Oscar for The Revenant, which is a movie that I don't like in a role that I don't like, so we're not going to talk about it. And then, he's been nominated 4 other times. He's been nominated for 9 Golden Globes and won 3 times. So clearly a man esteemed by his fellow actors in the other, branches of the Academy, who was a darling of some of the greatest living directors that we have today. He's also worked with Spielberg, Catch Me If You Can, and Christopher Nolan on Inception, which is, a sort of one of the films that defines the 2010s, to be sure. And, why I think he's not on this list is because he's a huge star, and he's famous for, he's been famous for 30 years at this point. And a lot of that fame is, 20-year-old supermodel that he's now, twice the age of or more. is he dating at this point? And, is that semi-reprehensible behavior? I don't know. But I think he takes that. I think what's interesting about him, he can either disappear in the way that we've talked about with some of these other actors. When you think about his character in Shutter Island, is just this tortured, viciously tortured individual that has none of his natural charisma. And then you have roles like Jordan Belfort, where the whole thing is the Leo is a compelling, he takes that character and makes us want to root for a man that is just horrific individual, horrific, human being, but makes us sympathize with him and want to be like him, and draws us into the scheme. And then who can forget Rick Dalton, and just the sort of comic excess of that role. So I think he can do it all, and he can lean into or out of that star persona however he needs to. And he's just matured as he's matured as a person. I think he's continued to mature as an actor in a really compelling way. So I think he's like Denzel, like one of the true movie stars that deserves to be on this list.
JB?
Not much to add. I think he's the antithesis of what I said, where some of these people are celebrities and personalities, and they get thrown a lot of money to be actors. He's a guy that's an actor that's just can't help it. He's a celebrity. He's a superstar, but he's a very good actor. And he's also very smart business-wise. He basically produces all his stuff. He knows a good thing when he had a pairing with Marty, and he kept it going. And he's obviously involved in other things besides the film business. And I just think he's one of these guys that's going to go down as a titan when you look back on his career 30 years from now, when he's maybe slowing down a little bit. I think he's going to have a lot more Oscars on his mantle place, and it might not just be for acting. And I think it's going to be directing and production and screenplays and those types of things. I think he's got those ambitions.
Yeah. So I just had two quick things to add. I've been vocal. Like I like Leo. I don't think I haven't been as effusive with my praise of him, but when Pat submitted some of the notable credits, I have to admit, I was like, what is my problem? I was like, he's been in every single one of these is a great movie that I've enjoyed. And they don't really work without him. And the one role that we didn't even mention was, The Aviator. It's
an award for.
Right. And he was incredible.
Pat's right.
Yeah. And, even some of these ones where he was nominated for an Oscar, like Blood Diamond, you forget, like he was pretty compelling, even if his accent was a little bit off, but there's pretty like, I think he gives an 8 out of 10 performance every time he's on the screen. For me, it's just the lack of variance, but I will say his Jordan Belfort, every time I've watched The Wolf of Wall Street, I literally feel like I have to take a shower afterwards because I feel so gross, because he's so compelling and you're so with him the entire time. You can't believe how you could follow somebody like that, but it's like he's just such a charmer, and it doesn't work with anybody but Leo. So Leo was Pat's pick. Of course, we had Christian Bale as JB's pick. I'm going to continue on a slightly sadder note with my pick, a guy who I was weighing a couple of options, but then I saw what he did in a more compressed time period than any of these other people, and I said I sort of have to go with him as a tribute. And of course, that person is Philip Seymour Hoffman. So notable credits in the 2000s: Magnolia, Paul Thomas Anderson; 25th Hour, Spike Lee; Capote; Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, Sidney Lumet; Synecdoche, New York, Charlie Kaufman; and The Master, again with Paul Thomas Anderson. So over this period, he won 1 Oscar for Capote, which was a very showy performance, and it was nominated for 4 total, including nominations for Charlie Wilson's War, which was a so-so movie, but he gives a good performance, Doubt, and of course, was it Lancaster Dodd in The Master. Also was nominated for 2 Emmys and 3 Tonys. Did not win any of those, but he has the Ito out of the EGOT. I went back and watched Boogie Nights the other night, And I just
Love Boogie Nights.
and just the movement between that, just if you look at his performances for Paul Thomas Anderson, between that, Magnolia, and then later on in The Master, he's just a guy who creates lived-in characters, and he can do it at almost any range. To JB's point about Christian Bale not really doing comedy, Philip Seymour Hoffman seemed to be comfortable in whatever tenor that you wanted him to play. And I just don't know if anybody has really replaced him as that sort of apex character actor who, no matter what, they never had the leading man looks, but my God, if he could create a fully crafted, he steals the scenes in A Punch Drunk Love, a movie with Adam Sandler. He delivers probably the funniest parts of the movie through his just unhinged screaming over the phone. And it's great. And then I remembered that he was also in, has some very memorable lines in a stupid Ben Stiller comedy called Along Came Polly, where he most notably defecates himself during a party and makes comment on that. But yeah, your guys' thoughts on Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah, this was definitely the omission that was like, oh man, how do you put this list together and you don't have Philip Seymour Hoffman on this list somewhere close to the top, honestly. But I was surprised. Of all of the names, this was the one that was most surprising to me. So I'm glad you picked it. Glad you picked him.
Yeah, he's been gone for 6 years, and his resume, I'll throw it up again, I mean, really speaks for itself. JB?
Yeah, I mean, I think of him from two roles for him that are maybe lesser. One definitely lesser role was in Scent of a Woman, replaced Weasley kid hiding behind Daddy's big wallet there, hoo-ha! And then the movie Ides of March with Clooney and Gosling, when he plays the campaign manager who's just the savvy veteran that's been around a long time, knows every trick in the book, and yet gets portrayed by Gosling and is not quite ready for it, but yet is ready for it. So he was a terrific actor. It's a shame that demons got the better of him, but he leaves behind a body of work that certainly his family and anybody else can be proud of. So
incredible. Well, JB, let's go into your second pick. I'll let you introduce it. Your second pick was who?
A young lady named Cate Blanchett. Maybe you've heard of her. There's some of her notable credits. Here's what I can say about Cate Blanchett. Not that a lot of things haven't been said about her, but you put her in any movie, and the movie's better. I don't care what it is. It could be about kung fu fighting. Could be about chess. Could be about world politics. Give her a role and tell her this is what you got to do, and she just melts right into it. She can do accents. She can physically change her appearance. She can look the same but look different at the same time. She can do dialect. She can do physical comedy if she has to. I mean, look at her in Blue Jasmine. Look at that character versus playing Elizabeth the Queen. Look at the versions of those roles in just a couple of years, and so effortlessly she does it. And then she's in the caper Ocean's 8, and she pulls that off brilliantly. I mean, she's been nominated for Oscars. I think she's got
she has two wins.
2 wins. She's just, I can't say enough about her. I just think she's one of these people that she's a, all deference to Meryl, but I think the younger Meryl Streep right now. Between her and like Kate Winslet, when I look at these two actresses, I'm thinking there's pretty much no movie that if you told me that they were going to be in, that I wouldn't say it was going to be interesting, no matter what the topic was. It's like, if they're in it, they have a good eye for material too. You know what I mean? Not just what's good for them, but what they know is going to be interesting, enthralling, entertaining, make people sad, make people upset, make people happy, make people cry. She's just one of these people that's like, if she picks your script, you're lucky, because she's going to make whatever the project is better, period. End of sentence. So her not being on this list is really an oversight that I can't quite understand. Anyway.
Pat, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think she is both tremendous. I like how she goes back and forth. Like, she was Galadriel in Lord of the Rings and doesn't have much to do in that movie. She sort of harnesses.
Thor, right? She plays the evil like queen in Thor too.
Yeah, Ragnarok.
Yeah. So I think those are two sides. Like, she's sort of a very dainty image in Lord of the Rings, but then she's clearly having a ball in Thor. I mean, I love Hela, the character that she plays in Thor, is just this vicious, campy, like one of the campiest villains of probably the past 20 years, in a truly delightful way. But then she also plays Carol Aird in Carol, which is I think one of the great dramas of the past 10 years, a movie that I liked a lot.
Right.
Oh, tremendous performance. So I think she can do both. I think she's got tremendous range, and as you say, JB, any project she joins, she makes better.
And we spoke to Leo earlier. Has there been a better interpretation of Katharine Hepburn than hers in The Aviator?
Yeah, I had that note. Yep.
I mean, has there been a better one without going into character? Sure.
I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I have written down. I said she's just lovely as a presence, and she's just chameleon. Like, I mean, she can kind of, to your guys' point, she sinks into the roles and she transforms at either end of the spectrum. And to your point about Carol, I said, she can give a huge unhinged performance like Blue Jasmine, and then come back and immediately tamp that down and remove all the histrionics and do something so intimate like Carol, and just give a stunning performance there as well. Has worked with the best directors around too. So clearly, talent recognizes talent a lot of times in this industry. And she's worked with some big names. So I think Cate Blanchett is a great pick, and definitely somebody who's worthy of inclusion on this list. All right. So Pat, your second pick was?
My second pick is like your first pick here, somebody whose career was cut tragically short earlier this year is Chadwick Boseman, who doesn't have any awards recognition. He has really only been active in lead in movies and certainly in lead roles in movies in the second half of this period that we're talking about, since 2010. But I think the work that he did was so impactful in that period, and so different from a lot of these other actors. We keep going back to the actors that we like. I think are ones that the three of us typically like are ones that dissolve and fade into their roles. And to some extent, his earliest credits are playing icons of the real world of African American icons from the 20th century. Jackie Robinson in 42. James Brown in Get On Up, and Thurgood Marshall in Marshall. And so those were his first starring roles, and certainly the vehicles that took him to prominence. And it's interesting because, they're all historical figures. They're, certainly in the case, they're really all groundbreaking, barrier-breaking figures. And you figure, why is the same actor playing, all these different roles? And I think it's because he really knew how to give life and humanity to the icons that he was playing, which I think is a very unique skill. But it's one thing to have a natural born charisma and put yourself up there, and that's the character that you play. And it's another thing to be one of these chameleonic people that can change their appearance, they can change their the way that they move in really targeted ways to become these characters. But he has that charisma, but he used it to take these larger than life, real life figures, but larger than life, figures, and give them a real humanity and a thrust to these movies. And I think that's a very unique and impressive skill for an actor to have. And then you see certainly his most prominent role is that of T'Challa, the Black Panther in the Marvel movies, and certainly headlined the first major African American led movie in the Marvel universe, and one of the most successful movies of all time. And in doing so, became this inspiring figure to millions and millions of people all over the world. But I think you see those earlier roles, and then he takes it and he creates he breathes that same life into a fictional icon that could, much like with some of the other characters in the MCU, if they cast that wrong, that character wasn't going to connect, wasn't going to be humanized, wasn't going to have an impact. And I think what he brought to that role is so unique. So very different, I don't think an actor that had time to be recognized by his peers. And then obviously the most tragic piece of it is this year we've seen him in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and To Five Bloods, where he plays Stormin' Norman for Spike Lee. And you see him start to branch out and play characters that are different than these icons that he's been playing. And it's tremendously sad that we won't get to see more of that. But I think that just that glimmer of what else could he do is really promising. So I think he's deserving to be on the list.
Yeah, JB, anything to add?
Not really. I would say it's in some ways it's sadly reminiscent of a Heath Ledger, which Heath at least gave his greatest performance right before he passed, of course, but it also leaves us, wanting what the young man could have done. And talk about chameleons, right? I mean, it's just deep into the world of the Joker, and I think Boseman is a similar type actor that he's able to, like you said, Pat, take the pieces of these iconic figures and try to find something about him that either he likes or dislikes, and then play off of it. And so it's not just a biopic per se,
right?
Interpretation of the individual, and much like Daniel Day-Lewis did with, I think, Lincoln. I mean, a lot of what he portrayed with Lincoln, which is not factually accurate per se, but makes sense within the context of the Lincoln that he was building. And I think Boseman was on his way to be one of those kinds of actors. So it really is sad, but by the same token, he's leaving a mark that people will be able to watch for, much like Hoffman, be able to watch for years going forward too. So.
Yeah, and my footnote would be, I mentioned earlier I watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and I haven't watched all of his performances across his career, but I have to say I think I legitimately, with no bias or looking through the lens of even sentimentality, I think for me, of the movies I've seen so far this year, and I've been catching up on a lot of them because we're going to start doing reviews, I think he, bar none, gives the best lead performance I've seen in any movie this year in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. He knocks the August Wilson dialogue and just the essence of the character totally out of the park. I would encourage everybody to watch that movie because I think both performances, Viola Davis's and Chadwick Boseman's, are great. And I also thought the direction was pretty outstanding in the film as well. So very sad, but leaves a legacy behind. And I think we're might be seeing him honored on Oscar night, perhaps with the biggest prize of all. So to close it out, is somebody that I have the biggest soft spot in my heart for, the person who I think might be the most talented actor out there in general. I had to choose Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams has transitioned from TV being sort of like a teen soap star into being like a really serious actor, like almost entirely flawlessly. I don't know how many people successfully do that, but she really stands out to me. I mean, notable credits here, and keep in mind, I don't think Michelle Williams she's in her like mid-30s, and she's already done some really great work. Most notably, my favorite performance of hers probably in Manchester by the Sea. Very intense performance across from Ryan Gosling in Blue Valentine, Meek's Cutoff, her work with Kelly Reichardt, and then, of course, her work next to her partner at the time, Heath Ledger, in Brokeback Mountain. Very compelling. So far, she's been nominated for 4 Oscars. Another role I had forgotten about was her Marilyn Monroe in My Week with Marilyn. That was out, I think, in 2010. She's already won an Emmy for Fosse Verdon, which was my favorite TV show of the last year. And she's been nominated for 1 Tony already. So again, she's doing it across a number of mediums. She's not only a screen actress, but she challenges herself to get performances on stage, and she's branching out onto the small screen and giving some really compelling performances as some sort of larger than life figures, and as Gwen Verdon in that show. I don't know what you guys think. I've never been disappointed, and I have to say that her performance, or supporting performance in Manchester by the Sea, is so fully realized and so real. It almost hurts to watch at times.
Yeah, I think it hurts to watch Michelle Williams a lot of the time when she's on screen. Not to say that she's not very good, because she's excellent. But as I think about, especially Manchester by the Sea, which is a movie that I admired, but don't have a strong desire to see again because it's very, very sad. But I think like there's no denying the just unbridled emotional power that she brings to each of those roles. I think that they just tend to be in movies that are definitely challenging. Sometimes, a lot of them are challenging to get through at least once.
Blue Valentine was I remember that was a struggle to watch in the theater, but yeah, man, her and Gosling really pushed it to the limit. JB?
Yeah, no, I like her. I liked her. My Week with Madeline was a great little picture. Turns out it had her co-star was what's the guy that won for
Eddie Redmayne?
Yeah, Eddie
Redmayne.
And a bunch of other British supporting cast, including Kenneth Branagh, who played Laurence Olivier, which was pretty interesting. She was really good in that. Almost kind of disappears in the Marilyn character in a subtle way, not an over the top, a very vulnerable Marilyn, but not so vulnerable that it was, turns into obsequious sort of patheticness. She didn't let Marilyn go that route. So, and she was also in another movie. I don't know if you guys remember. She played the Getty heiress there. Remember when with Christopher?
Right, I never saw that film.
Yep. And Mark Wahlberg.
Oh yeah.
She was actually very good in that, fighting sort of the woman standing alone, kind of fighting for her son, Getty's grandson, who thought it was all a hoax and wanted nothing to do with it, and goes toe to toe in a bunch of scenes with Christopher Plummer, and really holds her own. And so I really like that too. So she is very talented. There's no question.
That is a movie that got dinged because that's the one that was set up for actually a pretty nice release, and then I believe Kevin Spacey, they had to reshoot everything and bring in Christopher Plummer. And that was Ridley Scott.
That's the whole thing with the pay, that Wahlberg was making all this money and Williams was not making that money, and there was all that caused a problem too. So
yeah, it looks like she had a couple things coming up. But I just think, I don't know. I just think she's got. She just turned 40, and I think she's got a big runway ahead of her in this next decade. Before we close, I just, two questions that came to me while we were doing this exercise, which I think has been great, that I'll give you guys a second to think about. But one thing I wanted to say was, who's one other actor or actress that you would have liked to be able to spotlight or throw on this list? And then the other would be, if we're making this list again in 10 years, who's a young actor or actress that you expect would be in consideration for this? I'll answer the first question first, because I think there's a couple answers, but we just talked about Blue Valentine. Of course, the co-star of that was Ryan Gosling, and he's been killing it. I don't know how we didn't pick him. I mean, all these actors are totally justified and great, but I don't know how he wasn't even on the list to begin with. That seems criminal to me. He's carried franchises. He's the most charismatic. He seems to be able to play literally anything. And the fact that he didn't get recognition on this, it bums me out a little bit. I don't know if you guys had another alternate.
Yeah, I considered Rooney Mara, who's great in The Social, obviously great in The Social Network, and great in Carol, and great in what's the other one that I'm thinking of? Her. She is a smaller part for her and Her. I thought about her. I also thought about Carey Mulligan,
That's good.
but I didn't think. I don't know. I don't think they are at the same level as some of the other actors and actresses on this list. So, but those are the two that I considered.
I want to see a sister movie with Carey Mulligan and Michelle Williams. I think that would be great. Somebody needs to figure out the script for that.
Yes, that would be probably a very sad movie.
That'd be an extremely sad movie. JB?
Well, I got a few people that are coming to mind. I love Tom Hardy, but I don't think Tom Hardy's body of work is quite there yet. But I think as an actor, he's one of the best ones around. But I would say James McAvoy is going to be on this list.
Yeah.
We could argue he should be on the list now, but when you look at the franchise he's been part of and individual roles, and talk about breadth of characters he's played, and inevitably is credible in everything he does. I think that would be somebody to look forward to the future. And maybe, right now there's another actor he's kind of the consummate sort of supporting cast guy, but he's another guy where if you see him in the movie, it's going to be good. It's Kyle Chandler. Look how many this guy's been in the last 15 years, and series, Bloodline, everything he's in. First Man,
Friday Night Lights. He's so good at Friday Night Lights.
I mean, almost every Wolf of Wall Street, plays the FBI. Everything this guy's in, it's good. He's also another guy like my guy Mark Strong. He's another actor I love because almost every movie Mark Strong's in is a good movie.
Right.
He gives a good performance, but he's never. Now he's in this TV show Temple, which has gotten good reviews. I'm very happy for him. So there are these guys and actresses who are sort of, other side of it. I love Emma Stone. I mean, maybe it's Claire Foy. Claire Foy is on this list in 20 years. On the film.
Okay. All right. So you're saying Emma Stone and Claire Foy would probably be your ones for the future, and you said Kyle Chandler would be one that you think might have been another spotlight had you had another slot.
Right, and James McAvoy
absolutely as well.
Right.
All right. So Pat, you said you're one for now. Do you have one or two for the future?
Yeah, I think for the future, I think the two likely candidates you could see on this list. One is Timothée Chalamet, who is the anointed favorite son of Gen Z, sort of looks like a Victorian orphan, but still tremendously talented. And compelling screen presence that has acted against many of the actors that we've talked about today. So I think he's sort of an obvious pick, but I do think that that's a possibility. I also think Zendaya.
Those are going to be my two picks.
Sorry, I knew.
No, that's fine. I agree with you 100%. But please expound upon that.
I mean, she kind of like Willem Dafoe. She's starting out here in these Spider-Man movies, but she can go, and she was a Disney Channel star before that. But I think she's got tremendous potential. I'll let you talk. I haven't seen Euphoria. I know you haven't, are a big fan of that.
That to me has been the eye-opening one because I only knew her from sort of the personality and the post-Disney kind of blow-up that she had. And it seems like her career has been managed very well. But the swing she took in going for Euphoria, which is like full-on rated X sort of kind of story about Gen Z and the stresses they feel, and has every basically hot button topic and issue. And she's the heart and soul of that series. And she really as a early 20 something carries it, might be younger than that, carries that show through its first season. And they even have created a breakout 2 episodes in between the first and second season that really just are showcasing her character, Rue. I agree with you 100%, Pat. I think she seems to be able to, she can glam it up, but her character, and I think her natural state is a little bit more, it's probably an old term, but sort of more tomboyish, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more androgynous almost. So it'll be really interesting to see what she does, because I feel like her and Timmy are both kind of that androgynous presence. So they could be doing some really interesting things that maybe somebody like Tilda Swinton does now, where it doesn't really, like, it just kind of is a character. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next 10 years. And then one last shout out, one guy that I think we forgot, but it's kind of like Gosling, and I think has been doing some pretty good work. Jake Gyllenhaal has done some pretty work from Donnie Darko onwards. He's made a good transition into being a real professional and decent actor. All right. Well, we got out of here a shade under an hour and a half. We'll see what actually makes it to the editing floor or ends up on the editing floor. But thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the first edition of Hooray for Hollywood in 2021. We'll be back with more content, and we'll also be back with some movie reviews as January goes on. So make sure you stay tuned in. We'll have a couple new shows premiering in January. Make sure you subscribe and like. And until we talk to you next, we will
see you in the movies.